Weiter geht's mit dem nächsten Vortrag. Auch nochmal ein Hallo an die Neuen, die jetzt zugeschaltet haben. Wir haben jetzt einen Vortrag zur Personalization, how it works and what types exist and how you do it in a composable architecture. Deswegen darf ich heute hier ganz herzlich Tim Benniks begrüßen. Er wird uns heute ein bisschen was zu diesem Thema erzählen. Tim ist Principal Developer Advocate bei Uniform und ja, hat bereits langjährige Erfahrung im Bereich Composable Web. Und ein bisschen was zu Uniform erzähle ich euch auch noch mal kurz vorweg. Uniform war eine der ersten Firmen, die sich eben mit diesem Thema Personalisierung und Personalisierung im Composable Web beschäftigt haben und gelten somit auf jeden Fall auch bei diesem Thema als Vorreiter. Uniform kommt aus dem Bereich Personalisierung und ja, sie haben sich mittlerweile zu einer vollständigen Experience-Plattform entwickelt. Und ja, jetzt freue ich mich ganz herzlich, dass wir Tim Benniks hier an Bord haben. So welcome, good to have you here and thank you for filling in such a short notice, Tim. If you want, yeah, you're welcome to start.
All right. Thank you for the lovely introduction. Maybe you can unblock the fact that I cannot turn on my camera, so then people can see me. Ah, it's working.
Perfect.
Yes. So I thought maybe I can speak some German because I am Dutch, but it's so bad that I will only offend you. So
okay, I heard about it, but yeah, speak the language you're comfortable with.
We will go in English. So thank you for that lovely introduction. Let's see if I can share my screens. So I'm assuming this is working. If not, feel free to say so.
Perfectly.
Great. So we just had this great talk about composable DXP. And as you just said in your intro, where I work at Uniform, we also work in this space. And when you have something composable, there's lots of different systems that you're connecting. And if you want to do anything with personalization and things are connected a certain way, it's very complicated. And so in this talk, I want to actually go over the basics of how personalization should work, but then also how you can actually manage it when you don't have this central system anymore, because we don't have the suite software. We are composed. Everything is decentralized. So before I start, my name is Tim Benniks, and I'm the Principal Developer Advocate at Uniform. And you can find me on Twitter and on YouTube if you want. And in the end of the conference, of the talk, I'll also show you some links so you can learn more about Uniform, where I work. And so next to being at a startup, I also am a Cloudinary MDE. I work at the Mac Alliance. I'm part of the technical council. And also I'm an ambassador for Nuxt.js, which is a front-end framework based on Vue. And so let's talk a bit about personalization. And if you don't know what this image is, you're probably a lot younger than me. If you do, you will know exactly why this is fun. Anyways, so I worked before I worked here at the startup. I worked at a whole bunch of big agencies, and we worked on all these types of customers. And this is not like, hey, Tim is here to brag. It's actually to say that all these customers, they all wanted personalization without exception. All of them wanted it, no matter how, what form, they just wanted it. And actually, even though I worked at these agencies that are regarded as the best in the world, we could not actually deliver to them what they needed. And that's a kind of a telltale sign of how complicated personalization is and how much you have to rely on technology also to actually make it work. And so it was, in the end, it just comes down to the fact that it's really expensive. And even if you are a big company like Chanel or Lufthansa or whatever, it's still hard to do this with money, right? You don't want to throw it away. And so let's talk for a second how personalization actually should work, because just that on its own is pretty complicated. And so what I want to do is just go over this funny part from a movie that I narrate a little bit, and then we'll talk about how that actually relates to personalization. So it's basically like this, right? Two guys who haven't seen each other in a while actually spot one another and they greet each other in their own way. And when they do, they actually share some banter and they reinforce their relationship and they kind of like talk about things. And here you can see he's looking at his tie because it's pink. It's kind of funny. And then they basically take action and re-engage, right? And so that's actually a story of how personalization should work with your customers on your website. Because lots of websites just do this, just buy now, no matter what, right? And so what you actually want is you kind of want to make this relationship happen with your customer, to re-engage them constantly and to show them what they like to see. And it's the best personalization when they don't actually notice, but it just works. And if you do that correctly, you could have the ability to have 19% higher conversions. And 19% doesn't look like a crazy number, right? But it's amazingly high. If you think about Amazon, if they personalize well and they get 19% more sales, we're talking billions of euros, right? That's a lot of money. So you really want personalization because you can sell more, you get better brand communication, better attachment to your customers, right? And so now comes the question, all these brands that I worked for over the years, why didn't they do it? Why is it so complicated, right? Or maybe it's not, but why didn't they do it? And so basically it is complicated because there's a few things here. It's not just technical. It's also, you need to have the right people and the right skills to actually know what storytelling is and what is relevant for people. And you have to have research, right? And it's quite hard to get started with this, especially on the cost side of things, because you need to find software, you need to integrate it, and then you have done all this tech stuff, and then it still you haven't done the thing. You still have to learn about it all, right? You have to teach the people to make the content, and it's kind of a governance-like problem. And also because most of the time in traditional personalization, you need to do rules. And you make a rule, and based on a bunch of rules, somebody is placed into a persona. And then from that persona, you can show some components. And I've worked in projects where there were a lot of rules, and there were so many rules that people were almost considered like they have a PhD in rule making. Like it was completely dependent on this one or two people that knew how to make these rules and make them work. And it's really hard the moment you have 20 components, all with 5 variations based on rules. And so the rules duplicate a lot. It's hard to do, right? And on top of all of it, once you finally have it in and you're hoping for this 19% extra conversion, your websites become so slow due to how technically this works that you lose all your conversions because slow websites have worse conversions. And so you're kind of in a problem area, right? And so it's really slow. I've seen it where websites went from a 300 millisecond page load to a 1300 millisecond page load, therefore losing a lot of customers because if you can click buy now, it's not going to happen, right? It's too slow. And so I think what we should do is talk a little bit about the types of personalization that you can have on a technical level, right? How are they implemented and what do these companies that offer personalization actually do? And so there's 3 types. And so let's start with the suites. And a suite is basically a piece of software like WordPress or Adobe AEM or Sitecore, where everything is one big package, right? All software, it's like what came before composable DXP. They were calling themselves DXPs, but it's one piece of software, right? And in there, if you want to implement personalization, you basically just use the one that the suite offers you, because that's the way you work with these suites, right? You use their software. And so you're really quite strict on how to follow their front-end rules. You cannot really deviate because then when you do an update to the underlying system, things might break, right? So it does come first party with piece of software, but it's also requiring quite often actually separate infrastructure. If you think about Sitecore, they needed XDB, for example, to store all these things. And that's just costs and challenges all along, right? And then when you look at how the practitioner, so the end user in the CMS would work, they would have to come up with these rules, right? Figure out when this and this and this happens, or when a user is that kind of user, let's personalize this way. So it's kind of this complicated way of working. And if you want to scale that operationally, that's a lot of effort. And they do come with analytics, but it's all part of the suite. So it's relatively limited in analytics because one suite contains all pieces of software for your full DXP, right? So they cannot excel on all parts of that. That's just impossible. And then when you execute it, it is first party. So it is within the software of the suite, but it's generally origin based. And so what that means is if you are in America, your server is in Berlin, that's your origin, right? And so the page needs to be rendered from the origin all the way from somewhere in the US to Berlin. And then it also needs to apply all the rules for personalization, figure out who you are and what kind of person this is to personalize for. And so these page requests could range like around a second or more. And that's almost unacceptable. It's just too far. And even if you had a CDN, so you would serve the content close to a user for personalization, you would still have to go to the origin server because that's the brain of the operation that knows all the rules. All right. So then, because that was too slow and too complex, lots of new startups came about maybe 5 years ago, where these are like third-party scripts. And so, by the way, if there's any questions, I'm not sure if I can see these while I'm sharing my screen, but feel free to ask them. And break in so we can kind of talk if needed. Anyway, so let's talk about these third-party scripts. So they are not first-party; they're not part of your core software package. They're actually third-party. And what they tend to do is a script element in your page that you inject. It's the same as like Google Analytics or a Facebook follow pixel, things like that. You add them on, you tag it, and what it does, it changes your HTML based on rules that are set inside this third party. And so it requires some JavaScript to be able to change the HTML. But as a developer, you don't actually have much control over this. It's a third party that changes the HTML of your website based on whatever personalization it thinks you should do, which is kind of interesting because you can just put it on a page and start personalizing, which is kind of cool. But it also kind of hinders innovation. And if the website changes its structure, then this personalization dies. It doesn't work. And so it's also rules-based, but then in the third party, not in your own suite, for example. And they do lots of AI things because they have so many customers that they think they can kind of figure out the AI rules based on how people work. But sadly, there's not enough structured data to make this AI-based personalization really work. So what it comes down to most of the time is on Thursday, people shop this way, so let's make the button red rather than blue. That's pretty cool. And you can kind of, if you do that the right way, you might get a bit more sales. But actually, is that really the personalization you want to show? It's not super interesting. The more data we get that's really structured, the better this gets. But right now, it's not the most amazing thing. It's amazing marketing, however. They do have amazing analytics. There are platforms where you log in is basic. That's part of the job that they do. The execution type is third party. So it's tagged along on your website when you serve it. And as you have to wait for this HTML to render and change, and it's origin based, it's a little bit slower. So it's around half a second or a bit less, which is already way better than the previous one, right? And so then we have API first, which is the much more modern approach to it. And so this is completely decoupled, similar to how the third-party scripts are also kind of decoupled, but it ships as some code in your own application. So the developers have the choice of how to use it, even though it's a decoupled system elsewhere. It's a SaaS, right? And so what you'd have to do is in your own code base, add like a little tracker to figure out in JavaScript to figure out what the user is doing on your site, right? And it wraps around your existing stuff that is there. And so effectively, it becomes a first-party thing because even though it's a SaaS system, you put it in your own code. Then we have how you use it as a CMS editor. And so this personalized content is actually organized in your headless CMS or your orchestration platform. If you were to use Uniform, for example, it would maybe not live in your CMS, but in your composition. I will show that a bit later. The interesting part here is that especially when you go the route that Uniform is taking with this personalization type, that it's semi-automated. There's some rules, but it's not fully rules based, and it's much easier to work with. And I'll show you this in a demo a bit later. And basically what it does, it doesn't have analytics at all. It just, because it's a SaaS system, it just connects to other tools that would have analytics. So it could go to Segment or Google Analytics or Plausible or something like that, and then push whatever happens into these systems, and then they can make your dashboard, because we're composable. The tools in your composable platform need to be small and only do what they're good at. And then there's other tools that are amazing at showing analytics, right? And so you push it there and deal with it there. And so the execution type becomes first party, because you literally install the code in your own application. And if you do it the right way, which I'll show you in a sec, you can run it on the CDN edge, which is basically the new thing, because you used to have this origin server that is like, say, in Berlin and your user is in the US. It's a long time to travel to get a fast website. You can now do dynamic stuff next to the user. So the edge server would be actually in the US next to that user. And therefore, you can make web pages that are personalized, but they run in like 50 milliseconds. So we're talking a lot faster, almost instant, compared to what we saw in the other two solutions. And so probably in the last talk, what you've heard a little bit is that we're going composable, right? So initially on the left, you saw we had the suites that had all the things connected. Everything is in one box. And then a few years ago, all these front-end developers, I was one of those, we were like, yeah, but we need more flexibility. So let's make our front-end separate and let the rest stay in the suite. And then now it's changing so much that your personalization engine is also a composable block, just like hosting, just like your APIs in your CRM, in your commerce. And the only thing that remains in the suite is actually the CMS. And when we look at how it is right now in the space where Uniform plays and where all the DXPs play now, you don't have a suite anymore. It's all puzzle pieces and nothing is the center of the universe. And so personalization has to work as well, but we no longer have that central origin server that is the brain of all the rules. And we still need to make it happen, right? So all the magic is now happening on that CDN close to the user in a decentralized fashion. And we kind of need to figure out, how do we do personalization that way without calling an origin server and not kind of having too much things happening on this dynamic part of the site, because then it's slow again and it needs to be fast, right? So what if we could have that personalization so we get the higher conversion rates, but we also have the performance to keep these conversion rates? Well, we can actually do that. And so as I made these slides literally this morning, because I was asked yesterday to come and talk to you guys, I'll just show more demo than I'm speaking. So how about, let's go and have a look at the website that I've built. And I demo this once in a while. So I basically built my own personal website that is then connected to Uniform as a DXP orchestrator. I won't be talking about that much because this is much more about personalization. And I've actually integrated the personalization inside the website, and it's running on the Netlify edge at the moment. So when we look at this website, here we go. So this is my personal site, and you can see, hey, this is Tim. I like conference talks and I make YouTube videos. This is about where I work, my latest talks. And you can look at like my videos and my blog posts. There's a whole bunch of stuff, right? And this is on Netlify. So this is not my production site, but this is actually running off of the Netlify edge, and the pages are rendered statically. And so you probably have heard of the word Jamstack. This is a Jamstack site. So it's statically rendered and it's really fast. When I click on a page, it's basically instant, right? And so when you look at the Uniform dashboard, the way this has been built up, I'll quickly show you how it was built up. And then after that, we'll go into how the personalization actually works. So inside Uniform, it's basically a platform to connect all these headless sources in your DXP together and then make websites. And so for now, for this project, you can see there's a ton of integrations that we have. I'm using Cloudinary for my images. It's a DAM system, headless. Contentful as a CMS, BigCommerce for products, and Netlify as this CDN, right? And so on my homepage, you can see there's a whole bunch of things going on here. And so, for example, my hero component is actually connected to a Cloudinary image and a little component that comes from Contentful. And so you can actually hit preview and have a look at what this is doing. So Netlify is playing up a little bit today. So I'm hoping this is going to work. About half an hour ago, it said nope, and it died. But we're living on the edge, literally and figuratively. So let that run for a second and it will come. Basically, what we're doing here, I have my hero, which is a contentful component. Then I have some video highlights that show videos that are actually videos that come from Contentful as well. There's a whole bunch of things like that. Like my latest talks are also from a CMS. And this is still not running. Wow, I hope it doesn't break right when I have to do a conference talk. No. Try again. It would be crazy if this doesn't work. Come on. There we go. Apologies. So now you saw my website. You saw how I can kind of compose it with different headless systems here. I'll show you more on that in a second. Let's talk about personalization. So we have a personalization tab here. And what I've done is there's a whole bunch of types of things you can add in the personalization in Uniform. And I'll show you a little bit how it works. And then we'll talk about how it works because it's such a different approach than traditional personalization, right? So what I've done is I've set up signals. And a signal in this case is that the fact is that I live in France, right? And so if the country code is French, because the CDN gives that to me, I actually score some points against the fact that I am from France, right? And then there's also one, the conference speaking interest that I've created. So if you go to a page about speaking, or if you have a UTM query parameter that says the interest is conference, it will score some points against the fact that this person is interested in conferences that I speak at. And so I've kept it really simple. There's a whole bunch of other stuff you can do. And so now if you want to actually personalize this website, what you can do is say, okay, this hero, let's change it. Let's change the image and the content for when I'm actually based in France. Or I could change it for when you're based in Germany, for example. So let's do that one first. So what I can just do is hit personalize. And so this is the hero personalization. And what I want to show you now is a different hero. And so I made a hero just now in Contentful for the SwipeCon. Let's add that one. And then let's just add a French person. So this is the Cloudinary DAM system that was integrated. And here I have a French guy. And so now we have two versions of this hero. And this one I want to just personalize against the fact that I'm from France and the score is higher than 0. And so now that just updated the preview that I clicked on. So luckily it's working now. And it directly saw, oh yeah, but you're in France. So let's just directly change that. And so that's actually pretty interesting, right? That I didn't do that much. There is no origin server. This is still a deployed website on Netlify as a Jamstack site. And it personalized for me without actually querying any server because there's literally no servers that exist. So what we can also do is potentially have a look at this highlighted videos thing, because right now they're just random. Well, just some things I selected. But what if I'm actually interested as a user in the conference speaking that I do? We can change these things. If we know a little bit about the user based on the actions that they do on my website, let's personalize it to that. Because why not? Right? So let's actually add personalize. So this one is all good, but let's add another video highlights. And then we make it light and we just say, of course, normally you're not going to write personalized videos, most likely, but it's a demo. Okay, so let's add a featured video, make it big, and do anything about, let's say, here, this is a vlog about a conference I spoke at. Let's add another video. What else do I have? Yeah, this is also a conference talk that I had. And let's do one other one. I think this is also one that I did. It doesn't really matter for now. But so basically, we have to say videos, personalization, and this actually goes to your analytics. And so in here, because this is now personalized, let's say, okay, when you're interested in conferences and the score is higher than, let's say, 40, let's hit save. So right now, of course, nothing is personalized here because I haven't given an action that I might be interested in conference speaking. So when I go to the speaker page, and now I go back to the home page, suddenly these videos now changed and they're personalized about conferences. And you saw how fast that was. And this is still on my production side. And so what I've done here, when you go back to this personalization, I actually had to look, okay, you fixed the speaking page. So let me just change that. And what this is right now doing, this is actually personalizing through the Netlify edge. So if I don't have JavaScript, so this is a little button that turns off my JavaScript. I refresh my page. It's still personalized because the Netlify edge handler that is close to the user, and currently that's close to me in France, it knows what to render. So you can actually personalize now this dynamic page without having JavaScript. And when I turn it back on, there you go. And so what we have a little tool here that is basically a developer tool because this can get quite complex. There's lots of things you can do, and it's hard to actually code and QA it. And so what we can actually do is we can actually do something like what if, because let's first just clean everything. Right now, I remove the fact that I'm from France and that I like conferences. So you can actually say, what if I like conferences and the score is 50, and then you change it and there you go. So you can see directly working. And now when JavaScript is turned on, this is working with JavaScript hydration time, as they call it. And so when it's already running, this directly works. Okay, so this was lots of kind of fun demo, but I didn't really speak about how it actually works per se. So while I keep my screen shared, I'll just chat about this a little. Because if you actually do not have an origin server, you kind of need to figure out how to do this personalization without querying another place. And so what we've done, when you set up all your personalization rules and you hit this publish button here, what it does, it renders you a file that's called a manifest file. And all the rules that you set up here, or rules or whatever you want to call them, they're stored in a file and they go into your code base. And then when you actually look at your page here, all that stuff, like this is the personalized hero, personalized videos, when you look at what comes out here, is all the variations of what we have set up. There's a personalized version. Hey, I'm from France, I'm showing something else. All this information is actually also stored inside your code base. And so the only thing you have to do is have the uniform tracker that tracks the user's actions. And that tracker can look at the manifest file with all the configuration on the user's browser, right? And it looks at all the variations it has to show. The only thing that it has to do is look at the scores that you scored by going around and clicking on things, match them up and show you the things. And so you can kind of like make it organically grow. Like this tracker that we have makes kind of a profile of a user based on all the actions that they do, and it scores points against what is the most interesting thing for this user. And based on that, it shows the content. But it has the content already in its JavaScript. Plus, it has all the configuration rules. So it just has to match up and show. And that works on the CDN edge or in JavaScript. And it's GDPR safe, because it's all first party and we're not sending data anywhere. So it's a very interesting approach. And so I think I'm already on time. It's about half an hour. So I want to thank you for watching. And sorry if this was a bit ad hoc, but I literally just made these slides a few hours ago. And so if you like what you saw, you can follow me here, but you can also scan this QR code and join the Uniform Discord, where we can chat about all this, because I didn't really go in depth. That was it. Thank you very much.
Tim, thank you so much for joining today. And yeah, it was a very interesting topic and also a great addition to the first talk. So thanks again
Thank you.
for being here and yeah, talk about this topic and giving this great insight into the demo. And yeah, I wish you a great afternoon now. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao.